In this video, I will be demonstrating how to respond to question 1 or the synthesis prompt on the AP English Language and Composition exam. So I'm going to start with the prompt sheet. I apologize if there's noise in the background. That might be my laundry or my cats, but we'll do our best. It says, many recent college graduates have faced record levels of unemployment. This situation has led people to question whether what they value about higher education. Some high school students and their parents are wondering if a college education is worth the cost. Others, however, believe that a college education prepares students for more than just a job or career. So far I just kind of have a summary of the two sides. Some people are concerned it isn't worth as much money as it costs anymore. Others think it prepares individuals for their future career. Carefully read the following 6 sources, including the introductory information for each source. Then synthesize information from at least 3 of the sources and incorporate it into a coherent, well-developed essay that evaluates whether college is worth the cost. So here's my primary task. Oops, I kind of wrote over the words there. I didn't mean to do that. Primarily this second part where it says evaluate whether college is worth its cost. So it can be easy to kind of get caught up in this part up here, but really I want to make sure that I'm always kind of looking for this acknowledgement of an essay I'm supposed to write, because that's the specific task. So in this case, evaluating whether college is worth its cost. The argument should be the focus of your essay. Use the source to develop your argument and explain the reasoning for it. Avoid merely summarizing the sources. Indicate clearly which sources you are drawing from, whether through direct quotation, paraphrase, or summary. You may cite the sources as source A, source B, etc., or by using the descriptions in parentheses. So at this point in a synthesis prompt, what I like to do is kind of think about, do I already have an opinion about it? Do I know enough about it to have an opinion? And in this case, obviously I do. I mean, I've been to college, but even as a student, you understand questions about college and why people might not want to go, why some people would want to go. So if I do kind of have an opinion going in, I like to make note of that in kind of what I call my rough thesis, or like my draft thesis. And in this case, I'm going to argue that college is worth the cost. And when I actually write my essay, that thesis might be worded a little bit differently, but that's kind of the crux of it. And the reasons that I can kind of think of that might be my claims are financially, it can be helpful, it makes you more well-rounded, you can be more successful, and then maybe more prepared for whatever job you're going into. So that's kind of just like my brainstorm of possible claims. If I had to guess, I would probably say these first 2 are the ones that stick out to me without looking at the sources, but I'll kind of refine what I see when I get into the sources. All right, let's look at the sources, starting with source A. Source A comes from the New York Times Magazine, and it is called The Case for Working with Your Hands. So just based on first impression, this is probably going to argue against a college education, but we'll see. It says the following is excerpted from an article in the Sunday magazine section of a national newspaper. High school shop class programs were widely dismantled in the 1990s as educators prepared students to become knowledge workers. The imperative of the last 20 years to round up every warm body and send it to college, then to the cubicle, was tied to a vision of the future in which we somehow take leave of material reality and glide about in a pure information economy. This has not come to pass. To begin with, such work often feels more enervating than gliding. More fundamentally, now as ever, someone has to actually do things: fix your car, unclog your toilets, build your house. When we raise people who do work that is straightforwardly useful, the praise often betrays an assumption that they had no other options. We realize them as salt of the earth and emphasize the sacrifice for others their work may entail. Such sacrifice does indeed occur. The hazards faced by a lineman restoring power during a storm come to mind. But what if such work answers as well to a basic human need of the one who does it? I take this to be a suggestion of Margie Piercy's poem, To Be of Use, which concludes with the lines, "The pitcher longs for water to carry, and a person for work that is real. Beneath our gratitude for the lineman, may rest envy." So far, I haven't really seen anything that I can pull out to use in my argument. I do see this sentence at the bottom of the first paragraph might be able to use as a counter argument, but I'm going to keep reading. This seems to be a moment when the useful arts have an especially compelling economic rationale. A car mechanics trade association reports that repair shops have seen their business jump significantly in the current recession. People aren't buying new cars, they are fixing the ones they have. The current downturn is likely to pass eventually, but there are also systemic changes in the economy arising from information technology that have the surprising effect of making the manual trades, plumbing, electrical work, car repair, more attractive as careers. The Princeton economist Alan Blinder argues that the crucial distinction in the emerging labor market is not between those with more or less education, but between those whose services can be delivered over a wire and those who must do their work in person or on site. The latter will find their livelihood more secure against outsourcing to distant countries. As Blinder puts it, you can't hammer a nail over the internet, nor can the Indians fix your car because they are in India. So again, I still don't really have anything to kind of support the value of college. I'm going to highlight this as possibly another, like I said, counter argument or claim that I could refute possibly. But we'll finish it up. If the goal is to earn a living, then maybe it isn't really true that 18-year-olds need to be imparted with a sense of panic about getting into college, though they certainly need to learn. Some people are hustled off to college, then to the cubicle against their own inclinations and natural bents, when they would rather be learning to build things or fix things. One shop teacher suggested to me that in schools we create artificial learning environments for our children that they know to be contrived and undeserving of their full attention and engagement. Without the opportunity to learn through the hands, the world remains abstract and distant, and the passions for learning will not be engaged. So in summary, this source isn't particularly helpful, nothing that I really want to note, but I will put counter argument at the top in case there is something I want to come back and pull from it. All right, moving on to source B. It's titled "What a Liberal Arts Education is Good For." It's from the Huffington Post, I should say. The following is excerpted from an online article by the president of a liberal arts university. So probably going to be in favor of a college degree if they are a president of a college. But there could also be some possible bias in that. Obviously, they benefit from more people enrolling in college. So I just want to note that as I read and take that in consideration. Rather than pursuing business, technical, or vocational training, some students and their families opt for a well-rounded learning experience. Liberal learning introduces them to books and the music, the science, and the philosophy that form disciplined yet creative habits of mind that are not reducible to the material circumstances of one's life, though they may depend on those circumstances. There is a promise of freedom in the liberal arts education offered by America's most distinctive, selective, and demanding institutions, and it is no surprise that their graduates can be found disproportionately in leadership positions in politics, culture, and economy. So that would definitely kind of lay to that point about success, if I'm going to argue that college is worth the cost because you'll be more successful. So that was one of my ideas. What does liberal learning have to do with the harsh realities that our graduates are going to face after college? The development of the capacities for critical inquiry associated with liberal learning can be enormously practical because they become resources on which to draw for continual learning, for making decisions in one's life, and for making a difference in the world. Okay, so that was a good quote as well. Talking about how they're practical because those resources can be drawn for continual learning, for making decisions in one life, and then even for making a difference in the world. Given the pace of technological and social change, it no longer makes sense. Sorry, my cat's meowing. It no longer makes sense to devote 4 years of higher education entirely to specific skills. Being ready on day one may have sounded nice on the campaign trail, but being able to draw on one's education over a lifetime is much more practical and precious. Post-secondary education should help students to discover what they love to do and to get better at it, and to develop the ability to continue learning so that they become agents of change, not victims of it. Oh, I like that. Develop the ability to continue learning so that they become agents of change, not victims of it. I think that kind of ties into that idea of a college graduate being more well-rounded that I mentioned on my kind of think sheet. A successful liberal arts education develops the capacity for innovation and for judgment. Those who can imagine how best to reconfigure existing resources and project future results will be the shapers of our economy and culture. We seldom get to have all the information we would like, but still we must act. The habits of mind developed in a liberal arts context often result in combinations of focus and flexibility that make for intelligent, sometimes courageous risk-taking for critical assessment of those risks. I think that's another good quote about well-roundedness. I'm going to go back to my sheet here. I thought I said something about like just intelligence. Well, it's a more prepared, but this one can also be attributed to the idea of being more well-rounded. America's great universities and colleges must continue to offer a rigorous and innovative liberal arts education. A liberal education remains a source years after graduation because it helps us to address problems and potential in our lives with passion, commitment, and a sense of possibility. A liberal education teaches freedom by example through the experience of free research, thinking, and expression, and ideally it inspires us to carry this example, this experience of meaningful freedom from campus to community. The American model of liberal arts education emphasizes freedom and experimentation as tools for students to develop meaningful ways to working after graduation. Many liberal arts students become innovators and productive risk takers, translating liberal arts ideals into effective, productive work in the world. This is what a liberal education is good for. So I think of the kind of claims that I kind of set out in the beginning, these two are definitely represented in Source B. All right, let's look at Source C. Source C is a chart, clearly, and it comes from the Economic Policy Institute, and it is called New College Graduates Losing Ground on Wages. So this would probably be more in support that college is not worth the value if it says graduates have low wages, but we're going to read it. We might be able to use it in a counter-argument. The following is from an online article published by a nonprofit, nonpartisan think tank that aims to broaden discussions about economic policy to include the needs of low and middle income workers. As college students head back to the classroom this semester, a harsh reality confronts them. The rewards for the time, energy, and money that young people put into college are less than they were a decade ago. Since 2000, America's young college graduates have seen wages adjusted for inflation deteriorate. This lack of wage growth may be particularly surprising to those used to reading about the vast unfilled need for college graduates, which, if true, would lead to increases in their earnings. The chart below tracks the average inflation-adjusted hourly wage for young college graduates with no advanced degrees from 1979 to 2010. So I'm going to highlight one line from that. Basically, this summary, I would assume, of the chart, which says that over time they have deteriorated. But let's look down here. And so at the bottom, we have the different years going from 1979 to 2010. And what we're seeing is essentially, it looks like here is a high point in 2002-ish, and then it kind of goes downward over time from there. So I think, like I said, if I were to use this, it would probably be as a counter-argument, but let's definitely you read this last little bit. After gains in the 1980s and particularly in the 1990s, hourly wages for young college-educated men in 2000 were $22.75, but that dropped to almost a full dollar to $21.77 by 2010. For young college-educated women, hourly wages fell from $19.38 to $18.43 over the same period. Now, with unemployment expected to remain above 8% well into 2014, it will likely be many years before young college graduates or any workers see substantial wage growth. So yeah, again, if I'm going to say that college is financially smart, this would definitely be a counter argument to that because it is arguing the opposite. So I'm just going to make a little note for myself. If I can maybe find different evidence that supports the financial reason, I could maybe look back at this and use it as my counterclaim. All right, this is Source D. It is called Even for Cashiers, College Pays Off, and it's also from the New York Times. The following is excerpted from an online article in a national newspaper. The evidence is overwhelming that college is a better investment for most graduates than in the past. A new study even shows that a bachelor's degree pays off for jobs that don't require one: secretaries, plumbers, and cashiers. And beyond money, education seems to make people happier and healthier. So I think there's kind of two separate ones I can use in here, because this first sentence is talking about financial. Sorry, I put my little money sign. That might be confusing. But then here it says it makes people happier and healthier. So, I mean, I could maybe attribute that to being more well-rounded, more successful. That study is something I could refer to for both. Sending more young Americans to college is not a panacea, said David Autor, an MIT economist who studies the labor market. Not sending them to college would be a disaster. The most unfortunate part of the case against college is that it encourages children, parents, and schools to aim low. For those families on the fence, often deciding whether a student will be the first to attend, the skepticism becomes one more reason to stop at high school. Only about 33% of young people get a 4-year degree today, while another 10% receive a 2-year degree. So it's important to dissect the anti-college argument piece by piece. It obviously starts with money. Tuition numbers can be eye-popping, and student debt has increased significantly. But there are two main reasons college costs aren't usually a problem for those who graduate. First, many colleges are not very expensive once financial aid is taken into account. Average net tuition and fees at public 4-year colleges this past year were about $2,000, though Congress may soon cut federal financial aid. Second, the returns for the degree have soared. 3 decades ago, full-time workers with a bachelor's degree made 40% more than those with only a high school diploma. Last year, the gap reached 83%. College graduates, though hardly immune from the downturn, are also far less likely to be unemployed than non-graduates. So there's kind of two reasons here. It talks about full-time workers versus high school diplomas. So again, this is, just put the money sign because it kind of plays into the financial argument. And one thing that I think is interesting that this kind of made me think of, it talks about immune to the downturn. I guess one thing that this chart in source 3 doesn't account for is, I guess, changes in the overall economy. So if I am going to use it for a counter argument, that might be something that I could use. This mention of a downturn made me think about it, because if the economy's in recession, then yeah, employment rates, wage rates are all going to kind of ebb and flow. So that's something to think about. And then, wrong pen. I'm also going to make this note about support from financial aid. Not that that's a great argument, but it is something that I could maybe use. Skeptics like to point out that the income isn't rising as fast as it once was, especially for college graduates who don't get an advanced degree. But the gap remains enormous and bigger than ever. Skipping college because the pace of gains has slowed is akin to skipping your heart medication because the pace of medical improvement isn't what it used to be. The Hamilton Project, a research group in Washington, has just finished a comparison of college with other investments. It found that college tuition in recent decades has delivered an inflation-adjusted annual return of more than 15%. For stocks, the historical return is 7%. For real estate, it's less than 1%. So I'm going to this annual return being 15%, I think is probably the best financial argument. And I think I also like this little note it points out here that says it's adjusted for inflation, which to me makes it a more accurate piece of data than what's up here. So just something to think about. Another study being released this weekend by Anthony Carnival and Stephen J. Rose of Georgetown breaks down the college premium by occupations and shows that college has big benefits, even in many fields where a degree is not crucial. Construction workers, police officers, plumbers, retail salespeople, and secretaries, among others, make significantly more with a degree than without one. Why? Education helps people do high-skilled work, get jobs with better-paying companies, and open their own businesses. I'm going to highlight this. This is actually a good counter-argument to the previous source about working with your hands. I think it was source B. I want to get it. Yeah, because it specifically uses, I think it did. I'm doing a quick look for where it referred to plumbers as an example of people who work with their hands. Oh, no, it was source A, wasn't it? No wonder I couldn't find it. Because this source just used the same group of people. Yeah. See, it refers to people in manual trades saying plumbing. And then if we go down here, again, it refers to them. It just makes me think, create a link between those sources, and that's definitely something that I could use in a counter argument if I wanted to. All right, let's look at source E. It says, Thiel Fellowship pays 24 talented students $100,000 not to attend college. The Chronicles of Higher Education, just off the title, I'm going to guess this one is in favor of not going to college. The following is excerpted from an online article in a publication for college and university faculty members and administrators. The winners were announced today for a new fellowship that has sparked heated debate in academic circles for questioning the value of higher education and suggesting that some entrepreneurial students may be better off leaving college. Peter Thiel, a co-founder of PayPal, will pay each of the 24 winners of the Thiel Fellowship $100,000 not to attend college for 2 years and to develop business ideas instead. The fellows, all 20 years or younger, will leave institutions including Harvard University, the MIT, and Stanford University to work with a network of more than 100 Silicon Valley mentors and further develop their ideas in areas such as biotechnology, education, and energy. At least one student initially chosen as a Thiel Fellow, however, ended up turning down the deal, opting to continue her traditional education by accepting admission at MIT. Mr. Thiel said he had expected some applicants would decide to stay on their academic track. He admits he probably wouldn't have applied for the program like the Thiel Fellowship when he was a student in the 1980s either. Mr. Thiel studied philosophy at Stanford in the 1980s and later completed law school there, but now he wishes he had given more thought to the educational decision he made and their implications. Instead, it was just the default activity. You know, something that I find interesting, though, is this person is the co-founder of PayPal, and they're still super successful. So even while they may think that their college degree didn't help them, it does support what source B said, which is that people who go to college are more successful regardless of if they use that degree. Actually, that was in source, the last one, I think. Questioning the value of college. The fellowship seeks to help winners develop their ideas more quickly than they would at a traditional university. Its broader aim goes beyond helping the 24 winners by raising big questions about the state of higher education. Mr. Thiel ignited controversy when he told TechCrunch in April that he sees higher education as the next bubble, compared to previously overvalued markets in technology and housing. Both cost and demand for a college education have grown significantly in the years since Mr. Thiel was a student. He sees that rise as irrational. Students today are taking on more debt, and recently tightened bankruptcy laws make it more difficult to shake that debt, he argues, and those factors make higher education a risky investment. If you get this wrong, it's actually a mistake that's hard to undo for the rest of your life, he said. Critics contend that even so, Thiel's advice to leave school and develop a business is applicable only to a tiny fraction of students, and that Thiel's own success, aided by business relationships forged during his days at Stanford, argues against leaving school. Yeah, that's essentially... Oops, wrong one again. That's essentially what I was saying before. Like, he was successful because of his experience and relationships he made in college. So I'm going to make a little note for that as well. But Thiel is convinced that the social pressure to students to pursue low-risk trajectories in their career choices will lead to less innovation in the future. This makes me think, I think it was source B, where the liberal arts professor talked about how a liberal arts degree helps people to be problem solvers and to be innovators. All right, last source, source F. This is from Pew Research, and it's called Executive Summary of Is College Worth It? The following is excerpted from a 2011 report on the National Survey of 2,142 adults age 18 and older. Here's a summary of the key findings. Survey of the general public. Cost and value. A majority of Americans say the higher education system in the United States fails to provide students with good value for the money they and their families spend. An even larger majority, 75%, say college is too expensive for most Americans to afford. At the same time, however, an overwhelming majority of college graduates, 86, say that college has been a good investment for them personally. So it's kind of funny that pulls out a contradiction. But this one, I mean, I could attribute this to financial. I could connect it to being well-rounded. But there are possible places that I could use that statistic that 86% say it was worth the cost. Monetary payoff. Adults who graduated from four-year colleges believe that, on average, they are earning $2,000 more a year as a result of having gotten that degree. Adults who did not attend college believe that, on average, they are earning $2,000 less a year as a result. These matching estimates by the public are very close to the median gap in annual earnings between a high school and college graduate as reported by the U.S. Census Bureau in 2010, which is 19,550. A more detailed Pew Research Center analysis shows that the gap varies by the type of the degree and the field of study. So the census found that there is definitely a financial reason to go to college. It has this increase of $19,000 between a high school graduate and a college graduate. So that's definitely something we can use to make the financial argument. Student loans. A record share of students are leaving college with a substantial debt burden, and among those who do, about half, 48%, say that paying off that debt made it harder to pay other bills. A quarter say it made it harder to buy a house, 25%, and about a quarter say it had an impact on their career choices, 24%. So that would all be kind of refuting what I think. So I'm not going to highlight anything. Why not college? Nearly every parent surveyed, 94%, say they expect their child to attend college, but even as college enrollment have reached record levels, most young adults in this country still do not attend a four-year college. The main barrier is financial. Among adults ages 18 to 34 who are not in school and do not have a bachelor's degree, 2/3 say a major reason for not continuing their education is the need to support a family. Also, 57% say they would prefer to work and make money, and 48% say they can't afford to go to college. So none of that particular bullet point is really useful to my argument. Split views of college mission. Just under half of the public, 47%, say the main purpose of college education is to teach work-related skills and knowledge, while 39% say it is to help a student grow personally and intellectually. The remainder volunteer that both missions are equally important. College graduates place more emphasis on intellectual growth. Those who are not college graduates place more emphasis on career preparation. Career preparation is something that I mentioned as a possible reason. I'm not sure that's the best quotation to use, but I will put a note of it in case I need it. For most college graduates, missions accomplished. Among survey respondents who graduated from a four-year college, 74% say their college education was very useful in helping them grow intellectually. 69% say it was very helpful in helping them grow and mature as a person, and 55% say it was very useful to them to prepare for their career. So 55% say they're more prepared. That's a better statistic I could use. But I also want to note the 74 that say it was very useful in helping them grow intellectually, and those who say it was useful to help them grow and mature as a person, because that, I can attribute to the idea of being a well-rounded person. Above all, character. While Americans value college, they value character even more. Asked what it takes for a young person to succeed in the world, 61% say a good work ethic is extremely important, and 57% say the same about knowing how to get along with people. Just 42% say the same about a college education. So definitely a lot that I can use for the well-rounded source. So before I actually start writing my essay, I kind of want to go back to that original thinking page I had and kind of piece together what I'm going to talk about. I'm still going to argue that college is worth the cost. I felt like there was definitely enough evidence to argue both sides, but I feel more confident using the one I started with. And then in terms of the arguments that I think there was enough for, I think I could do financially well-rounded and successful. Prepared, I didn't really have much until the very last source at the end. But I would say these first two that you're more financially, the college is financially valuable, or that you become more well-rounded were the ones that I found the most evidence to support. So I think what I'm going to do over here is just think through the claims that I'm going to write. And then again, I'm going to keep them simple. College is worth the cost because graduates make more money. And then I want to do some notes for myself. I think I'm going to do a counter argument for this paragraph, because remember we had like this chart which actually seemed like it would kind of hurt our argument, but then we realized, it hasn't thought about inflation, it hasn't thought about how like the overall economy has changed, because I don't think this one said that it was adjusted. Oh, you know what? It does say it's adjusted for inflation right there. So maybe we shouldn't use that necessarily as the biggest deterrent, but instead we'll just acknowledge the fact that wages may have decreased, but then talk about the overall bigger difference, because we have that quotation at the end that talks about how there is that 20,000%, the $20,000 difference between a high school graduate and a college graduate. So I'm going to check one more thing. Sorry to be jumping around here so much. I just want to make sure. New college graduates losing ground on wages. Okay. So that's source C. I'm going to use source C as my counterclaim, but I'm going to refute it with that last source we read, which is source F with the 20 grand difference. Because the more I think about it, I suppose it was more like a 19,550, I think was the difference. The more I think about it, source C is talking about new college graduates, whereas if we're talking long term, that's where we might see the 20,000, and I'll be able to kind of use that as part of my counter argument. The second claim I'm going to make is that college, and again, I'm making these very explicit and simple. They might be worded a little bit different when I actually write the essay, but I'm going to keep them pretty simple right now, because graduates leave more well-rounded. And now to support that, I definitely want to use source B. That's the one that's written by the liberal arts college, because there was lots of examples of being able to, be an important member of their society, but also adapt and use their resources. So I'm going to use source B for that. And then I'm just going to kind of scan through, where else did I mention being well-rounded? Source D, it says college degree makes people happier and healthier, and it does refer to all graduate levels, like even if someone is doing a job where they don't use that degree, they're still better off, and that kind of plays into that idea of being well-rounded. I also have 86% said it was a good investment for them. We have the job preparation one, but I think these statistics are the better ones. These ones from source, I think this is F, where it says 75% say their college education was useful to grow intellectually, and 69% say it was useful to help them grow and mature as a person. So I think that's another good piece of evidence. So I'm going to use that one as my second source for this one. Do a quick check. I have 1, 2, 3 different sources. So I am good to kind of go and kind of launch my essay from there.